Budo, the way of the warrior. It was never simply a method of combat. It was a philosophy, a lifelong commitment to a path that demanded discipline, honor, and self-mastery. Victory was not the highest prize. In fact, it was often seen as a distraction from the true challenge, conquering the self. In the old dojos, there were no mirrors to admire oneself, no cameras to capture every move. There was only the polished wood of the floor, the soft rustle of a sleeve, and the sound of controlled breathing between strikes. The air carried the scent of sweat and effort, and the silence was broken only by the crisp snap of a perfect technique. Students bowed not because a rule demanded it, but because their heart recognized the worth of the teacher. Rank was not given for attendance. It was earned through seasons of relentless training. Every punch, every block, every kata was not just a movement. It was a meditation in motion, a conversation with centuries of tradition. Strength in Budo was never measured in the size of one's muscles or the height of one's kick. It was measured in the ability to remain humble in victory, composed in defeat, and unshaken in adversity. The goal was not to win against another person, but to win against one's own weaknesses. For generations, this was how the way of the warrior was preserved, quietly, patiently, without spectacle. But traditions are as mortal as the people who hold them. And a world that was changing fast would soon pull Budo out of the shadows and into the spotlight. The world after the Second World War was not the same one in which Budo had been born. Nations rebuilt, cities grew, and the martial arts had to adapt to survive. Dojos that once operated like private sanctuaries opened their doors wider, not only to pass down knowledge, but to keep the lights on and the mats in place. This was the beginning of a subtle transformation. The colored belt system was introduced, an innovation that made progress more visible and attainable for new students. White belts turned to yellow, then green, then brown, marking a clear path toward black. It was a brilliant idea for keeping students motivated, but also the first sign that Budo was becoming something structured for consumption. Seminars grew in size, tournaments multiplied. The focus, once entirely on personal growth and mastery, began to share space with group instruction, advertising, and revenue. Dojo owners became not only teachers but businessmen, responsible for marketing as much as for mentoring. The change was not inherently wrong. Without it, many traditions might have disappeared altogether. But each small adjustment, each concession to modern realities, chipped away at the purity of the path. The first cracks had appeared in the armor of Budo. They were small, almost invisible to those walking the path. But they were there, and in time they would widen. It began with local tournaments, friendly competitions that tested skill and built camaraderie. But as the decades rolled on, martial arts stepped onto the grand stage of global entertainment. The 1970s exploded with the lightning speed of Bruce Lee's strikes on the silver screen. Jackie Chan's fearless stunts turned fight scenes into breathtaking choreography. The Karate Kid sent millions of children rushing to dojos, tying on their first belts with stars in their eyes. Martial arts had become part of pop culture, and with it came a new kind of audience, one that craved action, story, and drama. The dojo was no longer a secluded hall of discipline. It had become a stage where image mattered as much as skill. The humble warrior was replaced in the public imagination by the flashy champion. A black belt was not just a symbol of mastery, it was a badge of charisma, a ticket to fame. Students no longer came solely to walk the path. Some came to play the part, to collect the trappings of mastery without enduring its hardships. The spotlight brought benefits, exposure, recognition, and opportunities, but also a shadow. And in that shadow, the true essence of Budo began to fade from view. With fame came temptation, and temptation brought compromise. The sacred symbols of real champions, the black belt, the medal, the trophy, were no longer reserved only for those who had endured years of training, sweat, and failure. Black belts began appearing around the waists of celebrities, politicians, and public figures, not because they had walked the long road, but because the photo op was good publicity. Instructors and organizations learned that a famous name with a black belt brought more attention than the most skilled student ever could. Tournaments evolved into lucrative enterprises. Entry fees soared, sometimes costing as much as a family vacation. Parents paid, students competed, and organizers profited. And in the pursuit of satisfaction for all, some events ensured that nobody left empty-handed. Medals for everyone, trophies for every participant. It was good for business. It was good for smiles. But it was not good for Budo. When a black belt can be purchased or gifted, it ceases to be a marker of mastery. It becomes a costume. When every fight ends with a prize, the lessons of loss, those sharp, painful lessons that forge true resilience, are lost as well. And then came the storm. Mixed martial arts. Brutal, raw, and stripped of all ceremony, MMA was the collision of every fighting style in the world under one roof. Inside the cage, there was no room for untested theory. Techniques either worked or they didn't. For many in the traditional arts, MMA was a wake-up call. It revealed the gap between what was practiced in the safety of the dojo and what succeeded under the pressure of real combat. For others, it was the ultimate entertainment, a perfect product for the internet age, where quick knockouts and highlight reels spread like wildfire. Fighters were measured not only by their records, but by their marketability, their ability to sell tickets, draw online views, and land sponsorship deals. Victory became something to be clipped, shared, and celebrated in a flood of social media posts. Defeat became a meme. The rules had changed, and with them, the audience's expectations. In the rush toward spectacle, something precious slipped away. The quiet, almost sacred bond between teacher and student was weakened. The black belt, once a deeply personal achievement marking years of transformation, was now often just another milestone on a marketing calendar. The slow lessons of discipline, patience, and humility gave way to the fast rewards of performance and promotion. Students trained to win competitions, not to master themselves. The idea that a defeat could be more valuable than a victory became almost alien. We didn't just lose rituals or traditions. We lost an entire mindset, a way of viewing life through the lens of constant, humble improvement. We lost the understanding that Budo was never about the applause at the end, but about the unseen work that nobody clapped for. And yet, Budo is not dead. Not while there are still those who refuse to let it die. In small, unremarkable dojos, far from the bright lights and the roar of the crowd, teachers still guide their students with patience, discipline, and respect. They demand more than attendance. They demand commitment. They do not promise quick promotions or guaranteed victories. They promise only the path and the hardships that come with it. But these guardians of tradition face a rising tide. The modern world rewards attention over authenticity. Social media favors spectacle over substance, and survival in this environment often means compromise. The question is, how long can they hold the line? In a world where the warrior's path is paved with sponsorships, streaming deals, and Instagram clips, who will still choose to walk the hard road? Budo's story is far from over. It lives in every student who steps onto the mat with humility, in every teacher who refuses to sell shortcuts, and in every dojo where the spirit of discipline still outweighs the lure of applause. But the survival of Budo in the modern world depends on more than tradition. It depends on the people who choose to carry it forward. If you've watched this far, you are already part of that story. We create these documentaries to preserve the history, the philosophy, and the truth behind martial arts. If you believe in this mission, there are many ways you can help keep it alive. Join our channel here on YouTube by clicking the Join button and becoming a member for exclusive content. Use Super Thanks to directly support this video and show your appreciation. And for those who want to go even deeper, become a supporter on Patreon. Your help keeps these stories alive and allows us to tell the ones that are yet to be told. You can find the links to Patreon and all our social media in the description below. Follow us, share our videos, and help spread the real spirit of Budo. Because in a world that moves faster every day, the path of the warrior is still worth walking. And together, we can make sure it's never forgotten.